Philozoopia.
Welcome, curious minds.
Hello.
Today we're plunging into a truly fascinating and, well, frankly, a bit unsettling collection of writings, C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters.
Ah, yes, a classic.
Now, these aren't your typical historical documents or, academic treatises. They are quite uniquely a series of letters.
From a demon, no less.
Exactly. A senior demon, Screwtape, writing to his junior nephew, Wormwood. And it's basically diabolical advice on how to tempt a human soul away from, well, what Lewis calls the enemy.
It's such a brilliant device, isn't it? Really turns things inside out.
It does, and the imaginative premise is one thing, but what makes it so enduringly powerful, I think, is how Lewis uses these cynical, conniving demons to unmask these really universal human weaknesses, the subtle ways our minds can be swayed.
Absolutely. And that's really our mission today, isn't it? To sort of extract those timeless nuggets of psychological insight, maybe even spiritual insight.
Yeah, and see how these, well, diabolical tactics still play out in our very modern lives.
Right. It's less about, ancient battles with pitchforks and more about the ongoing war for our attention, our values, our whole sense of reality, really.
Lewis himself puts a warning right there in the preface, doesn't he?
He does. He says there are two equal and opposite errors humans fall into about devils.
Right. Either you disbelieve in them entirely,
or you get excessively, maybe unhealthily interested in them.
And he notes both errors bring equal delight to the demonic side, which is quite a thought.
It really is.
And that feels like a crucial starting point for us. Because, look, whether you believe in actual devils or you see these letters as this profound metaphor for our internal struggles or maybe external negative influences, the insights into human behavior are just shockingly, uncannily relevant.
They really hold up.
I found myself thinking while preparing for this, Lewis was a master psychologist, even if his main intention was theological.
Oh, for sure. The psychological acuity is undeniable.
So let's unpack this incredible work together. Okay, let's start with maybe one of the most fundamental areas, Screwtape targets. How we humans process truth and reality.
The big one.
Yeah. He tells Wormwood that arguing with a human about whether something is true or false, well, it's often a waste of time. Especially in his patience era, which was 1941.
Right.
But honestly, it rings incredibly true today.
Scary true sometimes.
Screwtape sort of laments that humans in earlier centuries, quote, still knew pretty well when a thing was proved and when it was not. And if it was proved, they really believed it.
A different mindset.
Totally. But now, he says, thanks to things like the weekly press, which, let's be real, we can easily update that to the endless scroll of social media.
Oh, easily.
Humans are used to having like a dozen incompatible philosophies dancing about together inside their head. Doesn't that just capture the feeling sometimes? This intellectual free-for-all?
It absolutely does. And what's fascinating there is this shift, right, away from a genuine pursuit of truth towards valuing other qualities.
Like what?
Well, Screwtape advises Wormwood not to make the patient think materialism is true. Instead, make him think it's strong or stark or courageous, that it is the philosophy of the future.
Ah, it's about the vibe, the narrative.
Exactly. It's a profound insight into how narratives and just the perception of strength can completely override reasoned argument. Think about political campaigns today.
Oh, yeah.
How often are policies debated on their factual merit versus, say, how strong a leader appears or how forward-thinking a vision sounds?
It's all about the emotional resonance, the tribal affirmation, isn't it? Less about logical validity.
Precisely. Lewis basically laid out the psychological blueprint for modern propaganda decades before the internet. And jargon, as Screwtape says, jargon becomes your best friend.
Why jargon?
Because it makes people feel like they're part of an in-group. It's about fitting in with the tribe, not about actual intellectual rigor.
That's spot on. And he explicitly warns Wormwood against awakening the patient's reason.
To danger.
Yeah. Once it is awake, who can foresee the result? Instead, the goal is to fix the patient's attention on the stream of immediate sense experiences and teach him to call that real life.
Right. The tangible stuff.
He gives this incredible example, doesn't he? About an atheist patient reading in the British Museum.
Yes, that one's brilliant.
This guy is on the verge of a profound thought, like a real shift in perspective. And Screwtape, instead of arguing, just subtly suggests it's time for lunch.
Simple, but deadly.
Once the man is out on the street, sees a newsboy, sees a bus, battle won, he's convinced that a healthy dose of real life is enough to show him that all that sort of thing just couldn't be true.
It's such an ancient strategy, but with massive modern consequences. We are constantly bombarded, aren't we, by immediate sense experiences,
Or phone's notification.
the demands of the visible, the tangible world. Screwtape's point is, if you can keep humans focused on the superficial, the immediate, the buzz and newsboy of their existence,
Hmm.
they just won't delve into deeper, maybe uncomfortable truths.
It keeps them occupied.
And it's even worse, because he notes that real sciences, like physics, maybe can actually encourage humans to think about realities he can't touch and see, which is dangerous for the devils.
So what's the alternative?
Stick to economics and sociology, apparently. Anything that keeps them tethered to what he calls invaluable real life. It's about anchoring their thought in the material, the quantifiable, keeping them away from anything that might inspire awe or wonder at the unseen.
So anything that keeps them focused on the observable world, the material stuff, rather than, say, abstract concepts like justice or beauty or truth itself.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal, he says, give him a grand general idea that he knows it all and that everything he happens to have picked up in casual talk and reading is the results of modern investigation.
Oh, that's chillingly familiar.
Isn't it? It's not about actual knowledge, but the feeling of knowing. That superficial confidence.
And this is where it gets really interesting for us today, I think. The internet, social media, quick news bites, they can so easily give us this grand general idea without any deep understanding, right?
Totally. You get fed jargon, buzzwords,
Ruh.
you feel informed. But Screwtape suggests this is precisely the fuddling, the confusion that he wants.
It's like being intellectually full without having consumed any actual nourishment.
Well put. And it also connects to what he says about prayer later on in Letter IV.
Ah, yes. How does that link up?
Well, Screwtape advises Wormwood that if he can't stop the patient praying altogether, he should try to turn the patient's gaze away from the enemy himself.
And towards
Themselves.
Yeah.
Get them to watch their own minds, trying to produce feelings like charity or courage or forgiveness by action of their own wills, instead of simply asking for them.
So it becomes about effort and performance.
Right. They start judging the value of their prayer by how successful they are in producing the desired feeling. They don't realize this success depends hugely on whether they're, well or ill, fresh or tired.
So you end up observing your performance of prayer rather than actually praying.
Exactly. It becomes this performative act, this internal effort to generate a feeling, rather than a genuine connection or maybe an act of surrender.
That sounds eerily like some modern wellness or self-help trends, doesn't it? Where the focus is almost entirely on internal emotional states, on manifesting certain feelings,
Good thing.
rather than on, say, external action or connecting to something larger than yourself. You're trying to feel brave, instead of just being brave and acting courageously, regardless of how you feel.
It shifts the whole thing from being about a relationship to being purely internal, almost narcissistic endeavor.
And Screwtape has another trick for prayer, right? Something about images.
Yes, his most subtle weapon, maybe. Encourage the patient to pray to a composite object. An image of the enemy derived from pictures or vague ideas, even just objectified reverence.
So not the real thing.
No. He wants the human praying to the thing that he has made, not to the person who has made him. The real danger for them, the desperate situation, is if the human ever consciously directs their prayers not to what I think thou art, but to what thou knowest thyself to be.
Wow. That cuts deep. It gets to the core of authenticity, doesn't it? Whether it's prayer or any kind of self-expression, are we interacting with reality or just with a self-created projection, an idealized version of what we want something to be?
That's a huge point about self-created projections. It really touches on something deeply relevant to our current anxieties about the future, which Screwtape explores later in Letter XV.
The future, yes.
He acknowledges that humans live in time, but our enemy destines them to eternity. Okay, so therefore the enemy wants them focused either on eternity itself or that point of time which they call the present.
Why the present?
Because, as Lewis puts it through Screwtape, the present is the point at which time touches eternity. It's where freedom and actuality are offered them. This idea of the present as the only point of real action is such a profound challenge to our contemporary obsession with tomorrow.
It really is. We're always looking ahead.
And this is where the devil's strategy becomes crystal clear. Our business is to get them away from the eternal and from the present. Simple as that.
So distract them from now.
Right. While living in the past can have some limited value for the devils, because the past has a determinate nature, it resembles eternity. In a way, it's far, far better to make humans live in the future,
Why the future specifically?
He explains that biological necessity already points our passions that way, right? So thinking about the future naturally inflames hope and fear. And crucially, the future is unknown to them.
Ah, so it's fertile ground for speculation and anxiety.
Exactly. In making them think about it, we make them think of unrealities. The future, he says, is the thing least like eternity. Just think about how much of our media, our economic models, even our self-help advice, is geared towards either utopian futures or dystopian ones.
That's a powerful statement, and you see it everywhere today, don't you? The constant anxiety about climate change, economic collapse, AI taking over, political instability.
Or the flip side.
Right, or the utopian visions. Technological salvation, transhumanism, endless growth, all future-focused.
And Screwtape says nearly all vices are rooted in the future. Think about this. Gratitude looks to the past and love to the present. Fear, avarice, lust, and ambition look ahead.
Wow.
He wants humans hag-ridden by the future, totally willing to break commands in the present if they think it'll secure some future heaven or avert some future hell.
So they're perpetually in pursuit of the rainbow's end, never honest, nor kind, nor happy now. It's just an exhausting way to live, isn't it? Always chasing something that isn't here.
It's the ultimate deferred gratification or maybe deferred suffering. This constant projection into an imagined future, good or bad, keeps humans from fully inhabiting and acting in the present moment.
Which is where Lewis suggests true duty, grace, knowledge, and pleasure actually dwell.
Right. The devils even manipulate the word complacency to discourage being at ease in the present, even if that ease comes from simple good health or enjoying your work. Anything that brings genuine present happiness needs to be broken up. Because, as Screwtape chillingly asks, why should the creature be happy?
It's a stark reminder of how our modern anxieties and aspirations, if we let them run wild, can actually become tools against our own well-being and our genuine connection to reality.
Absolutely.
And building on that, in Letter Texty 7, Screwtape talks about how easily humans can be made to dismiss ancient wisdom using what he calls the historical point of view.
Ah, yes. This one's brilliant.
He describes it like this. When a learned person encounters an ancient author, they never ask whether it is true. Instead,
They ask who influenced the ancient writer, right? And how far the statement is consistent with what he said in other books, and what phase in the writer's development it illustrates, all that stuff.
exactly. To actually consider an ancient text as a possible source of knowledge that could potentially modify your thoughts or your behavior, well, that would be seen as unutterably simple-minded. Doesn't that resonate deeply with modern intellectual trends?
It's chillingly relevant, isn't it? Such an astute observation of academic and intellectual trends, both then and now. The emphasis shifts entirely from what is said to who said it, when, and what it represents.
It's analysis over application, context over content.
Precisely. Think about classic literature or historical documents. How often do we dismiss them, not because their ideas are actually flawed, but just because they came from another era or a different worldview? We don't even engage with the truth they might contain.
We become historians of ideas rather than students of wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. And this allows each generation to be effectively cut off from all others. It prevents that free commerce between the ages where, as Lewis suggests, the characteristic errors of one may be corrected by the characteristic truths of another.
So it keeps us in a kind of perpetual intellectual adolescence.
Yeah, always emerging from phases, as Screwtape loves to say later, rather than actually accumulating wisdom. It protects us from the uncomfortable challenge of potentially universal truths.
Okay, so we've seen how Screwtape aims to warp our internal landscape, truth, time, how we engage with ideas. Now let's explore how these, well, insidious tactics play out in maybe the most intimate parts of our lives, our relationships and communities.
Right, the social dimension.
He has some truly chilling insights here, starting with that initial disappointment that new converts often face. This is detailed in Letter 2. The patient becomes a Christian, and guess what the devil's great ally is?
Let me guess. The church itself.
Bingo. Not the eternal invisible church, mind you, but the tangible local one, the one down the street.
The one with real people in it.
Exactly. He sees a half-finished, sham Gothic erection, maybe an oily grocer, bad hymns sing out of tune, and crucially, that selection of his neighbors whom he has hitherto avoided. It sounds like the most mundane, anticlimactic scene imaginable.
It's the immediate reaction of superficial judgment, isn't it?
Hmm.
If the neighbors sing off-key, or their boobs squeak, or they have double chins, the patient can quite easily believe that their religion must therefore be somehow ridiculous.
It's the classic trap of idealization hitting mundane reality.
It happens everywhere.
Yeah.
The dream job with tedious paperwork, the passionate relationship that settles into daily routines, the inspiring political movement that gets bogged down in petty squabbles.
Lewis calls it anticlimax, doesn't he? Marking the transition from dreaming aspiration to laborious doing.
Yes. And the enemy, according to Screwtape, actually allows this disappointment. It forces humans to do it on their own, to develop a faith that's less dependent on emotion and therefore much harder to tempt.
So weirdly, this process of disillusionment actually makes the human more resilient.
Paradoxically, yes. It's a test of commitment beyond that initial emotional high. It's building a deeper foundation.
But Screwtape also notes how easily we fall into judgment. He calls the patient a fool who, despite his supposed humility, secretly believes he's run up a very favorable credit balance just by converting.
Right, like he's doing everyone a favor.
Yeah, showing great humility and condescension just by going to church with these smug, commonplace neighbors. The lack of self-awareness is just staggering. He's so busy looking at the flaws in others.
That he completely misses his own growing spiritual pride.
Exactly. Which leads directly into the dynamics of domestic annoyance, right? Letter 3, focusing on the patient's relationship with his mother.
Ah, the daily pinpricks.
Yes, the goal is to build a good, settled habit of mutual annoyance, daily pinpricks. How?
By keeping the patient's mind firmly on his inner life, his sort of expurgated version of himself.
The idealized self.
Right, and directing his attention to advanced and spiritual duties while he neglects the most elementary duties right under his nose. He's encouraged to self-examine for an hour without discovering facts that are perfectly clear to anyone who has ever lived in the same house with him.
Oh, this is so relatable. It's the person posting about their amazing spiritual journey online while ignoring the dirty dishes or snapping at their family.
We've all seen it, or done it.
And Screwtape also advises rendering prayers for the mother innocuous. How?
By getting him to focus on her sins, which, with a little demonic nudge, can just mean any of her actions which are inconvenient or irritating to himself.
So clever, so nasty.
The aim is to make him pray for an imaginary person, so unlike the real mother that no thought or feeling from his prayers for the imagined mother will ever flow over into his treatment of the real one.
It's about segmenting your compassion, isn't it? So it never has to touch actual difficult people right in front of you.
And creating a double standard is absolutely key. The patient demands his own words be taken at face value, judged only by what he said.
But his mother's words.
Oh, those get judged with the fullest and most oversensitive interpretation of the tone and the context and the suspected intention. So naturally, both end up convinced, or very nearly convinced, that they are quite innocent.
We see this dynamic play out constantly, especially online, right, where tone is lost.
Absolutely, leading to endless misunderstandings and grievances. It's that passive aggression that might look harmless on paper but feels not far short of a blow in the face. Think about how often online arguments escalate just because we're reading text through our own biases instead of maybe asking for clarification.
That's a powerful modern correlation, the casual cruelty that screens can enable when that nuance of human interaction gets stripped away. And speaking of social dynamics, Screwtape is absolutely delighted in letter X when the patient makes some new friends.
The right kind of friends from Hell's perspective.
Exactly. They're rich, smart, superficially intellectual, and brightly skeptical about everything in the world.
Sounds familiar.
And Screwtape's instruction to Wormwood encourage a subtle play of looks and tones and laughs by which a mortal can imply that he is of the same party as those to whom he is speaking.
Just blend in. Don't make waves.
It's a kind of betrayal, isn't it? And by the time the man realizes what he's doing, withdrawal difficult, it's that slow, almost imperceptible erosion of integrity.
Classic social pressure.
Ugh.
The patient knows deep down his faith opposes his new friend's basic assumptions, but Screwtape suggests he can be persuaded to just postpone any open acknowledgement of the fact.
Ow. What levers do they pull?
Of the usual suspects. Shame, pride, modesty, and vanity. He'll stay silent when he ought to speak up. He'll laugh along when he ought to be silent. He'll start assuming all sorts of cynical and skeptical attitudes which are not really his.
And the crucial warning.
All mortals tend to turn into the thing they are pretending to be.
Oof. That idea of performing an identity until it becomes your reality, that is so relevant in an age of curated online personas, isn't it?
Massively relevant. How much of what we project day after day eventually shapes who we actually become?
That is so true. It's the performance of identity, online and off. That temptation to code switch so completely you just lose your authentic self somewhere along the way.
And Screwtape even notes that modern Christian writings, even back then, had moved away from the old warnings about worldly vanities, the choice of friends, and the value of time. Why?
They classified them as Puritanism.
Exactly. And he boasts that the negative spin put on that word is one of the really solid triumphs of the last 100 years.
That's how moral warnings get neutralized, isn't it? Just label them something unfashionable, something old-fashioned or conservative or judgmental.
And boom, it effectively defangs any challenge to the prevailing social norms.
And if the patient is, as Screwtape puts it, a big enough fool,
He can manage to live two parallel lives. He appears, and maybe actually is, a different man in each of the circles he frequents.
or even more subtly,
He can take a positive pleasure in the perception that the two sides of his life are inconsistent. He actually enjoys kneeling beside the grocer on Sunday because he remembers the grocer couldn't understand his sophisticated Saturday night world.
and vice versa.
And he enjoys the body and blasphemy with his smart friends because he's aware of this deeper spiritual world within him that they can't possibly understand.
So it gives him this continual undercurrent of self-satisfaction.
Exactly. Making him feel like a complete, balanced, complex man while actually being permanently treacherous to at least two sets of people. It's the ultimate intellectual snobbery, feeling superior to both groups while being truly loyal to neither.
That's chilling. That self-deception, feeling superior just because you can navigate contradictory worlds. It also connects to the double strategy regarding community in letter X16th, doesn't it?
Yes. Church shopping.
Right. Screwtape is furious that the patient keeps attending just one church. He suggests if a man can't be cured of church-going, the next best thing is to send him all over the neighborhood looking for the church that suits him until he becomes a taster or connoisseur of churches.
He wants to cultivate a consumerist approach to community.
Totally. Which absolutely creates that consumerist mindset towards faith and community. It transforms what should be maybe a place of shared journey into a marketplace of personal preferences.
And Lewis points out that the traditional parochial organization, just based on shared geography, forces people of different classes and different psychologies together, which is exactly what the enemy desires.
But the alternative.
The congregational principle, as Screwtape calls it, makes each church more like a club or a coterie. This church shopping turns the human into a critic instead of a pupil.
Instead of being open to learning.
Exactly. The enemy wants humble receptivity, a state where even platitudes can become really audible. But a critic, they're too busy appraising and rejecting to truly receive anything.
And we see this today not just in churches, right? But in how people approach social groups, political movements, even online forums.
Yeah, definitely. They're not necessarily looking for a place to learn or to serve, but a place that suits their preferences, that aligns perfectly with their existing biases.
And Screwtape absolutely loves party churches, doesn't he? Not for deep doctrinal reasons, though.
No. He says the real fun is working up hatred between those who say Mass and those who say Holy Communion, when neither party could possibly state the difference.
It's the petty squabbles over purely indifferent things, candles and clothes and whatnot, that are admirable ground for their activities, the ultimate distraction from actual substance.
It really highlights the power of trivial divisions. We see it constantly in modern politics and social discourse. Minor stylistic differences or perceived slights become these flashpoints for intense animosity.
Way beyond any substantive disagreement.
Exactly. Think of culture wars, where the actual policy differences might be pretty minimal, but the identity wrapped up in the stylistic choices becomes absolutely paramount.
Right.
Screwtape even notes that the enemy taught humans to give in to the human with scruples on unessentials, meaning those with fewer hang-ups should ideally defer to those with more.
But that doesn't happen.
Well, thanks to the devils, he claims, that principle has been largely removed. So what could be a hotbed of charity and humility instead becomes a breeding ground for self-righteousness and division.
And finally, on identity, in letter XE4, Screwtape reveals this really subtle vice in the patient's new Christian girlfriend.
Yes, the insider feeling.
Right. She has this untroubled assumption that the outsiders who do not share this belief are really too stupid and ridiculous, while it's considered venial in her, like, a relatively minor sin.
He wants the Haitian, who's still a novice, to imitate this defect, until what was venial in her becomes in him the strongest and most beautiful of the vices, spiritual pride.
It's like a subtle but dangerous infection spreading.
It's the danger of the inner ring or the secret society mentality. even within a group that seems benevolent on the surface. The patient, he's impressed by his new, intelligent Christian friends, and he's kind of clouded by love.
Understandable.
And he starts to feel he's finding his own level,
Yeah.
that these people are his sort and that he has come home. This fosters a sly self-congratulation.
Where we Christians starts to subtly mean my set.
Exactly. And my set means the people with whom I associate by right, not the people who, in their charity and humility, have accepted me. It becomes about exclusivity, not inclusivity.
So it's not about being overtly proud of being a Christian because the enemy's warnings against that are too well known.
Right, too obvious.
It's about this vague complacency about his set, maybe an air of amusement at the things the unbelievers say. This is where Christianity risks becoming a kind of mystery religion, where he feels like one of the initiates.
It's social vanity dressed up as spiritual superiority. It fosters that intellectual snobbery and an us versus them tribalism that is just so prevalent in many modern social and political movements. It creates division, even within contexts that should be unifying.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now. We've looked at the mind, we've looked at the social sphere. How do these demonic strategies play out in our daily struggles, particularly with things like pleasure, pain, and just plain perseverance?
Right, the nitty-gritty of living.
Let's start with how war and suffering, which are obviously a big backdrop to the book, written during WWII, how are they viewed from hell's perspective? You find this in letters V, XE8, XE9, and XXX.
While Wormwood is initially delirious with joy that the war has started, he just sees it as entertaining.
But Screwtape, the seasoned professional, corrects him sharpish.
He does. Duty comes before pleasure, he says. The immediate fear and suffering are a pleasing refreshment, sure, but what permanent good do they actually do unless we made use of it for bringing souls to our Father below?
So suffering isn't the end goal.
No, it reveals a core devilish principle. Suffering itself is not the ultimate goal. It's a means to an end damnation. The real danger for them, ironically, is that war might lead to thousands turning in this tribulation to the enemy.
Or focusing on higher things.
Exactly. Tens of thousands might have their attention diverted from themselves to values and causes which they believe to be higher than the self.
That's fascinating.
And the enemy, Screwtape complains, even makes prizes of humans who have given their lives for causes he thinks bad.
On what grounds?
On the monstrously sophistical ground that the humans thought them good and were following the best they knew, which suggests that genuine self-sacrificial intent, even if it's misguided from a divine viewpoint, holds a certain value to the enemy. It's the act of self-giving maybe more than the specific cause.
And what's the most disastrous thing for the devils in wartime?
The continual remembrance of death. It just renders their usual weapon of contented worldliness useless. In war, Screwtape gripes, not even a human can believe that he is going to live forever.
They prefer a comfortable death.
Oh, absolutely. They prefer humans to die in costly nursing homes, amid doctors who lie, nurses who lie, friends who lie, all promising life, keeping crease away, enabling self-indulgence right to the end. War strips away those comfortable illusions.
It rips away that veil of false security, forces a confrontation with mortality that, let's face it, our modern society often goes to incredible lengths to avoid.
It's a powerful insight into our modern discomfort with mortality, isn't it? We build these illusions of perpetual youth or indefinite life, which Screwtape sees as a great weapon for them.
And the paradox of crisis continues later, in letter 28. Screwtape is actually furious when Wormwood gleefully reports on anticipated air raids. Why?
Because the patient in that moment of crisis is taken out of himself. He's increasing in conscious dependence on the enemy. If he dies now, Screwtape says, he's almost certain a loss to them.
So the ultimate goal isn't the immediate suffering, it's the soul's eventual capture. And death, if it comes at a moment of spiritual growth or dependence, is actually a failure for the devils.
Precisely. They'd much rather the human survive, because time itself is their ally. The long, dull, monotonous years of middle-aged prosperity or middle-aged adversity are excellent campaigning weather.
Why is that? Why is monotony better for them than crisis?
Because, Screwtape says, it's so hard for these creatures to persevere. The routine of adversity, that kind of quiet despair, can just wear a soul out by attrition.
And prosperity.
Prosperity, on the other hand, knits a man to the world. He feels at home in earth, which is exactly what they want. It's the slow, steady grind that wears people down, not necessarily the big dramatic crisis.
That really speaks to the challenge of sustained virtue, doesn't it? It's not the grand, heroic moments that are necessarily the most dangerous for us, but the slow, incremental erosion of principle, through just mundane pressures.
Absolutely. And the young Screwtape notes are often less unwilling to die. Their appetite for heaven might be stronger. Things like fantasy and music and poetry can still blow our whole structure away.
So how do they counter that youthful idealism?
They make them believe that Earth can be turned into heaven at some future date by politics or eugenics or science or psychology. Keep them tethered to worldly pursuits. Distract them from any real spiritual longing.
We see that today, don't we? That pervasive belief that all societal problems can be perfectly engineered away rather than maybe acknowledged as partly inherent to the human condition.
It's the modern utopian dream in a nutshell.
Which also connects nicely to the law of undulation he discusses in letter 8.
Ah, the troughs and peaks.
Right. Screwtape tells Wormwood off for thinking the patient's current dryness and dullness are his own doing. No, he explains, humans are amphibians, half spirit and half animal. We naturally fluctuate between periods of emotional and bodily richness and liveliness and periods of numbness and poverty.
This undulation is just part of the deal, a kind of spiritual ebb and flow.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The enemy, God, apparently relies on these troughs even more than the peaks. Why?
Because the enemy wants free servants, sons, whose wills freely conform to his, not just cattle who can finally become food. So he sometimes withdraws those sensible supports, those nice feelings and incentives,
Leaving the person.
leaving the creature to stand up on its own legs, to carry out from the will alone duties which have lost all relish. Screwtape admits it is during such trough periods, much more than during the peak periods, that it is growing into the sort of creature he wants it to be.
So prayers offered in that state of dryness, with no emotional reward, actually please him best.
That's what Screwtape fears. It's a profoundly counterintuitive truth. True growth often happens not when we feel uplifted and inspired, but when we choose to persevere just by feeling absolutely nothing.
That's a radical idea. The lack of feeling, the sheer perseverance through dry spells, is actually more potent for spiritual growth than the emotional highs. It's about intention over feeling.
And the greatest danger for the devils. Screwtape says, our cause is never more in danger than when a human, no longer desiring but still intending to do our enemy's will, looks round upon a universe from which every trace of him seems to have vanished and asks why he has been forsaken and still obeys.
Wow, what a chilling thought, but also deeply profound. It's the ultimate act of fidelity without any immediate reward or sensation.
And of course, the devils try to exploit these troughs too, right, as detailed in letter 9.
How so?
Well, they provide an excellent opportunity for all sensual temptations, particularly those of sex, simply because resistance is lower when you're feeling down or numb.
Makes sense.
And trough sexuality, he notes, is much less likely to lead to being in love, and it's much more easily drawn into perversions. The aim is always an ever-increasing craving for an ever-diminishing pleasure.
That phrase captures so much, an ever-increasing craving for an ever-diminishing pleasure. That's the core of addiction, isn't it? A pursuit of novelty and sensation that offers less and less real satisfaction over time.
Absolutely. Think of how much of modern consumer culture is built on that exact principle. Always needing the new thing, the next experience, only to find the satisfaction is fleeting, maybe even less than last time.
It really is. And a key tactic during these troughs, Screwtape says, is to keep the human ignorant of this law of undulation.
Right. Make him think that initial wonderful feeling, that ardor, should have lasted forever, and therefore the current dryness must be permanent.
Which can lead to despair.
Or, if he's the hopeful type, persuade him that his whole religious phase is just dying away. You know, like all his previous phases, his stamp collecting phase, his vegetarian phase.
Right, it was a phase. I've been through all that. That was just adolescent.
Those are the jargon words, Screwtape points out, that substitute for actual reason. It's a way of casually dismissing potentially deep experiences as mere developmental stages you've grown out of.
It keeps the mind off the plain antithesis between true and false, doesn't it? Replaces it with these hazy ideas of progress and development.
Exactly. It's how meaningful change or commitment can be undermined by just a casual, dismissive attitude towards past experiences. It prevents genuine integration or deeper understanding. The devil doesn't need you to disprove something. He just needs you to categorize it as something I grew out of.
So subtle. And gluttony, too, is presented as a subtle weapon in letter X7.
Yes, but not necessarily the kind we usually think of.
Right. Screwtape scoffs at Wormwood's simplistic idea of gluttony. He says, one of the great achievements of the last 100 years has been to deaden the human conscience on that subject. not gluttony of excess.
The gluttony of delicacy.
Yes. He uses the patient's mother as the prime example. She'd be astonished to learn that her whole life is enslaved to this kind of sensuality, even though the quantities involved are small.
She just wants everything exactly so.
She constantly demands a cup of tea, weak but not too weak, and the teeniest, weeniest bit of really crisp toast.
Yeah.
It sounds almost quaint, almost harmless.
But the principle is powerful. It's the tyranny of precise preferences. Because what she wants is often smaller and less costly than what's easily available. She never recognizes as gluttony her determination to get what she wants, however troublesome it may be to others.
And this leads to daily ill temper, cooks giving notice, cooled friendships, all over a cup of tea.
Pretty much. We've all seen it, haven't we? Or maybe even been that person who can't just eat what's available without making a fuss because it doesn't perfectly align with their brand or their sophisticated palate.
And that seemingly small preference, when it's denied, can just unravel an entire evening. It leads to disproportionate irritation, passive aggression.
And for males, Screwtape notes, this kind of gluttony is often linked more to vanity, like guys who pique themselves on having found the only restaurant in the town where steaks are really properly cooked.
Right, the connoisseur complex.
The crucial point Lewis makes here is, if the denial of any indulgence, however small, puts him out, then his charity, justice, and obedience are all at your mercy. It's about the underlying attitude, the dependence, the fussiness, not really the quantity consumed.
And there's that subtle link he draws between physical well-being and our moral or spiritual state, too.
Yes, he hints that mere excess in food can sometimes be like artillery preparation for attacks on chastity.
Yeah.
But the real trick for them is false spirituality.
How so?
Never let the patient notice the medical aspect. Let him torture himself wondering what deep spiritual failing, what pride or lack of faith has caused his current irritability or weakness.
Rather than just asking if he got enough sleep or ate properly.
Exactly. It's the avoidance of practical, embodied self-knowledge in favor of abstract self-condemnation. A timeless strategy to keep us from recognizing simple, observable causes for our struggles, leading us to over-spiritualize what might just be needing a good meal or a nap.
It keeps us spinning our wheels internally.
And he also touches upon the concept of gradualism in letter 12, which is so central to their whole strategy.
The gentle slope.
Exactly. Screwtape emphasizes that hell's goal is usually achieved not through grand, dramatic, sudden sins, but through a slow, almost imperceptible deviation from the right path. He says the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts.
He uses that analogy of a man being imperceptibly led down the garden path, doesn't he? Taking one tiny, trivial step after another.
Until he's miles away from his starting point without ever having made a conscious decision to change direction. He never realized it was happening.
That's chillingly subtle, isn't it? It's not about convincing someone to commit some terrible act overnight.
No, much harder. Usually less effective.
It's about getting them to compromise just a little bit on seemingly small things. A slightly dishonest expense report, maybe a small unkindness ignored, a tiny indulgence in gossip.
Each one feels insignificant on its own. Trivial.
But the cumulative effect is profound. In our modern world, you can see this online, can't you? The slow creep of desensitization to extreme content, maybe, or the gradual erosion of privacy through clicking accept on minor permissions again and again.
It's never one big leap, is it? It's 1,000 tiny clicks, tiny compromises that lead you down a path you never consciously intended to take.
Exactly. And this connects to how the devils approach pleasure itself in letter 13.
Ah, yes, this is a fascinating one.
Screwtape reveals something quite surprising here. He says the enemy, God, actually created all pleasures, both physical and spiritual.
Right. Devils don't create pleasure. They can only corrupt it, distort it, or encourage its overuse. Screwtape admits all the merriment, all the comic delight, all the pleasure comes from him. And all the perversion, all the vice, all the ugliness comes from us.
So their tactic isn't to remove pleasure entirely.
No, it's to twist it. They make humans constantly pursue that ever-increasing craving for an ever-diminishing pleasure we talked about earlier.
That's such a profound insight. It's not that pleasure is inherently bad or wrong,
Not at all, according to Lewis here.
but that the misdirection of pleasure or the addiction to it is the real problem. This is why they love to encourage false wants and the constant chasing of novelty.
You're always seeking the next hit, the next high, but each subsequent experience delivers less and less real satisfaction, leaving you perpetually unfulfilled and wanting more.
That's basically the engine of modern consumerism, isn't it? The endless desire for new products, new experiences, driven by a manufactured sense of dissatisfaction with what you already have.
Precisely. Keep them chasing, never arriving.
Okay, let's delve into what Screwtape clearly sees as the enemy's ultimate weapon, and frankly, hell's greatest mystery: love.
The insoluble question for them.
Right. In letter X8, he dismisses being in love as just a curious and usually short-lived experience. He claims hell's philosophy is brutally simple. One thing is not another thing, and one self is not another self.
It's all competition. Dog eat dog.
Exactly. My good is my good, and your good is yours. What one gains, another loses. To exist, to be, means to be in competition. That's their fundamental axiom.
And this purely competitive worldview stands in stark contrast to the enemy's impossible philosophy. Screwtape calls it one continued attempt to evade this very obvious truth.
What's the impossible philosophy?
This enemy aims at contradiction. Things are to be many, yet somehow also one. The good of oneself is to be the good of another. This apparent impossibility he calls love.
So unity and diversity, mutual good, that's just nonsense to Screwtape.
Utter nonsense. He even sees the Trinity as some bizarre way for this nonsense about love to find a foothold in his own nature, and the very invention of things like the organism where parts cooperate, or the family.
What about the family?
He sees them as obscene, because in an organism, parts are perverted from their natural destiny of competition and made to cooperate. And in a family, members, though distinct, are united in a more conscious and responsible way. The whole idea that independent entities could freely choose to be unified and work for a common good is just utterly incomprehensible, even repellent to them.
It's clear they just cannot fathom selfless, cooperative love. And they try to twist the enemy's idea of one flesh in marriage, too, don't they?
Oh, definitely. Screwtape argues that one flesh doesn't really mean happily married or even in love. For practical purposes, it just means mere copulation.
That's cynical.
Extremely. He implies that humans get tricked into believing that being in love is the only thing that makes a marriage happy or holy, when in reality it's often a complex blend of affection, fear, desire, practicality.
So this leads humans to dismiss marriage entirely if they don't feel that intense in-love feeling.
Right. They start seeing other motives like loyalty, mutual help, companionship, even wanting to raise children as somehow low and cynical. It's the romantic ideal blinding people to the practical realities and maybe the enduring strengths of a long-term committed relationship.
And the flip side.
Conversely, any sexual infatuation, whatever, so long as it intends marriage, will be regarded as love. And love will then be held to excuse a man from all the guilt and protect him from all the consequences of marrying someone totally unsuitable.
Which is a recipe for disaster.
A recipe for lasting and exquisite unhappiness, as Screwtape gleefully anticipates. It's a chilling premonition of how romanticized love, taken as the only criterion, can blind people to fundamental incompatibilities.
And Screwtape actually admits, doesn't he, in letter 19, that the enemy really loves the human vermin and really desires their freedom and continued existence.
Yes, momentarily. Then he immediately retracts it, calls it mere carelessness in his writing. He just can't square it. He calls this love the insoluble question for devils. What does he stand to make out of them?
That's the absolute core mystery for hell, isn't it? What is the enemy's real motive for love? They simply cannot comprehend disinterested love because their entire philosophy is based on absorption, consumption, competition.
Their worldview has no room for it. Screwtape says, if ever we came to understand what he means by love, the war would be over and we should re-enter heaven.
Wow.
Which is why they keep pushing for more and more complicated theories, fuller and fuller collections of data, believing that sheer intellectual effort, more analysis, will finally unlock the secret.
It's the ultimate failure of a purely materialist or purely self-interested worldview. It literally cannot compute or explain genuine self-sacrificial love.
It speaks volumes about the limits of a purely rational or self-interested way of understanding the universe. They can analyze, theorize, observe human behavior with incredible accuracy, but they fundamentally miss the why behind the enemy's actions.
And this failure extends to how they manipulate sexual taste, too, in letter XX.
Yes. Screwtape describes how deeper, more experienced devils work to misdirect sexual taste through things like popular artists and advertisers.
What's the goal?
The aim is to guide each sex away from those members of the other with whom spiritually helpful, happy, and fertile marriages are most likely.
That sounds incredibly relevant to how beauty standards and ideas of sexual desirability are shaped in modern culture.
It's a direct parallel, isn't it? Especially through media and advertising. Screwtape highlights this historical shift from desiring, say, statuesque and aristocratic types to exaggeratedly feminine types, and then in what he calls the age of jazz, towards women whose bodies are scarcely distinguishable from those of boys,
And he notes this is a beauty even more transitory than most.
which aggravates the female chronic horror of growing old. And, he suggests, makes them less willing and less able to bear children. It's presented as this cruel manipulation that sets women against their own biology and natural aging process.
And what about the effect on men?
Well, the apparent nude, often seen in art and media figures that are maybe falsely drawn, or real women who are pinched in and propped up, this directs men's desires towards something which does not exist.
An impossible ideal.
Exactly. The role of the eye becomes paramount, and its demands become more and more impossible. It's a stark critique of how manufactured beauty ideals can lead to perpetual dissatisfaction, the chasing of unobtainable fantasies. An infernal Venus, he calls it, that lures people into brutal, unhappy relationships, or even away from marriage entirely.
It creates this huge chasm between expectation and reality, breeding endless frustration and loneliness.
Precisely.
Finally, let's look at the concept of ownership, which Screwtape discusses in letter XE1. He loves to encourage this sense of ownership in general.
Yeah, he finds human claims to ownership hilarious.
He mocks the human belief that they own their bodies, calling them vast and perilous estates from which they are ejected at the pleasure of another.
He compares it to a little royal child fancying he owns a whole province, when really he just holds titular command for a short time.
It's a profound challenge to our modern understanding of self and autonomy, isn't it?
It really is. It challenges that modern my body, my choice ethos, not necessarily by denying personal autonomy, but by placing it within a much larger context, a context of creation and maybe stewardship, rather than absolute ownership.
And Screwtape says the devils confuse humans by teaching them to reduce all senses of the word my, from my boots to my God, down to the single meaning of ownership.
Right, the my, that means the thing I can pull to pieces if I like, or the God on whom I have a claim for my distinguished services.
Yeah.
It collapses all forms of relationship and possession into this one, single, self-serving, transactional model. Everything becomes a commodity.
It's the ultimate self-serving illusion of control. But the cosmic joke, Screwtape says, is that the word mine, in its fully possessive sense, cannot be uttered by a human being about anything. Not really.
In the long run, he argues, either our father Satan or the enemy God will say mine of each thing that exists, and especially of each man. It comes down to two claims.
What are the grounds for those claims?
The enemy claims ownership on the pedantic, legalistic ground that he made it, while our father hopes to claim it on the more realistic and dynamic ground of conquest. It sets up the ultimate struggle for possession of the human soul. Are you created or are you conquered?
That really encapsulates the fundamental tension of existence presented in the book. Are we created beings, entrusted with our lives and talents, or are we ultimately just raw material for consumption or conquest?
It puts it starkly. And the ultimate failure for Screwtape, the culmination of all this, comes in the final letter, letter XXY. The patient dies.
But not in the comfortable, drawn-out way the devils prefer.
No, quickly, suddenly, in the midst of duty during an air raid, Screwtape is absolutely furious. Because the human had escaped the worldly friends, he was in love with a very Christian woman, and he was daily increasing in conscious dependence on the enemy.
So the very moment of crisis, which the devils had hoped to exploit for despair or terror,
Became the moment of his ultimate commitment and liberation.
the description of the moment of death for the patient is incredible. A sudden clearing of his eyes, as he saw you, Wormwood, for the first time, and recognized the part you had had in him, and knew that you had it no longer.
It's described as sheer, instantaneous liberation. All the horrors of the war just vanished like a bad dream. The patient thinks, you die, and then you are beyond death.
It's an immediate, unequivocal transition, a total triumph over everything the devils had worked for.
And this is the ultimate paradox for hell. Screwtape describes how the patient sees the enemy's agents, these angelic beings, the gods, who are strange to mortal eyes, and yet they are not strange. Because he knew that he had always known them and realized what part each one of them had played at many an hour in his life when he had supposed himself alone. So now he could say to them one by one, not, who are you, but so it was you all the time.
Wow. That's a profound moment of recognition, like finding the central music in every pure experience finally recovered. The moment where the hidden order, the true nature of reality, is finally revealed to him.
And he even sees the enemy himself, who is blinding, suffocating fire to Screwtape.
But cool light and clarity itself to the patient, and where's the form of a man?
This is the ultimate defeat for Screwtape. The patient embraces the very pains that were meant to destroy or deter him. All the earthly pleasures, even the legitimate delights of virtue experienced on earth, now seem like the half-nauseous attractions of a rattled harlot compared to the true beloved he now encounters.
It's a moment of transfinite values, he calls it. Beyond all devilish arithmetic, everything just changes perspective completely.
And Screwtape, in his final impotent rant, actually briefly transforms into a giant centipede, believing in his delusion that it's a glorious manifestation of that life force which our Father would worship if he worshipped anything but himself.
So even at the very end, his hard-nosed realism, his rejection of all that silly nonsense and claptrap about love,
Is what sustains him in a perverse way. But it's also the very thing that blinds him completely to the true nature of the enemy's love, which remains forever their insoluble question. He cannot escape his own fundamental, self-serving, competitive philosophy.
And so our deep dive into the Screwtape Letters really leaves us with a truly provocative thought, doesn't it? In a world that's constantly striving for more, faster, newer, are we maybe falling for the very ancient trap Screwtape describes?
Are we prioritizing superficial jargon over real substance? Are we favoring those immediate sense experiences over deeper truths? Are we more concerned with belonging to a set than with genuine humility? Are we pursuing that ever-increasing craving for an ever-diminishing pleasure?
And perhaps most importantly, in our relentless pursuit of control and ownership, are we missing the profound reality that maybe the things truly worth having, like love, joy, peace, are not things we can ever possess or manufacture, but gifts? Gifts to be received often in the very moments we least expect them, or maybe when we feel we have nothing left to lose.
It really raises an important question for reflection, I think. What unseen forces, whether we think of them as internal biases, cultural pressures, or maybe even the spiritual influences Lewis directly alludes to, are shaping our own sense of reality today? And how often do we mistake those fleeting sensations or social validations for true fulfillment and lasting connection?
This book, written decades ago, really does offer a powerful, if unsettling, lens to examine our present moment.
It certainly does.
Food for thought indeed. And that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us.
Philozoopia.